Welcome to the Jets UK podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Andres Groves. I'm joined by one of my co-hosts, Matthew Merrett, and the former co-host, David Wyatt-Hupton, who will be still very much part of the show, but probably less as a kind of permanent co-host. But David, how are you feeling? And welcome to season 2 of the Jets UK podcast.
I'm feeling good. I'm feeling, whirlwind yesterday. It was a bit of excitement. I enjoyed it. Looking forward to the draft. I'm kind of bored of talking about these prospects now, ready to move on to 2023. Yes. So, but I feel good.
Yeah, Matt, how you doing?
I am good. I was in meetings yesterday afternoon and my phone was kind of blowing up and Twitter was going all over the place and I couldn't quite keep up. It was a whirlwind in a teacup, wasn't it? The speed at which it happened, everything suddenly we're linked, suddenly we're the favourites, suddenly we're not the favourites, and ultimately those pesky elements couldn't quite overcome it. But yeah, it's exciting. It's good to see JD be that aggressive because I think there has been some frustration about how it's gone. There's obviously questions about whether he could have been more aggressive and got it done, but I think it was still pretty exciting and good to see.
Yeah, we'll break obviously all that down in a little bit. We'll obviously definitely dive into what happened yesterday on that Wednesday. That kind of 1.5 hour whirlwind of information that just went up and down. It was like, as you said on your article, on your newsletter today, David, up the hill and down again. It was literally one of those ones. So, no, crazy times. But yeah, on today's show, the main thing that we were prepping for the show is draft diamonds. So basically, finding those guys who, if we have to go with value elsewhere or a position up in the top of the draft, who are some guys at the end of the draft who could fill in those roles that we aren't able to plug at the top. So David's brought his knowledge with a lot of his favourite guys at the back of the draft in those kind of mid to later rounds, and we'll be discussing them. And there's some pretty interesting prospects there. And we obviously, from last year's draft, we had some really good players come in, so that hopefully we can hit on a few more of those as well. So, but I think that before that, yeah, we'll just head off to the news, and I think you know what we're talking about. Right, okay, so for the news this week, there's only really one thing to really talk about, and that is the Tyreek Hill news that broke on Wednesday afternoon, our time. It was announced that he was he was given permission to look for a trade. Very quickly, it was, almost like 5 minutes later, the Jets and the Dolphins were listed the two teams. The trades were confirmed to be in, and it was up to his decision, and that was made within about 20 minutes, and it was just crazy. So yeah, David, how are you feeling about everything, the fallout from yesterday's events?
It's a difficult one. I wish it wasn't the Dolphins that he went to. I think that's going to be one of the most difficult pills to swallow over the next few years if they can get a quarterback that can get him the ball, because Tyreek Hill's an interesting character because he has got a sketchy past. You do have to kind of, you have to live with that as fans because you can't control it. You can't control what your team does. You can't control the players they bring in. But I don't know anyone who would be comfortable with some of the stuff that's in his past. It is in his past, and you have to respect that. You have to respect the court of law and everything like that. But he's a phenomenal player. And I think we're been so devoid of these like top end stars at skill positions for so long that people were just clamoring for it. And I really wanted Tyreek Hill. I'm not going to lie about it. I don't. He doesn't seem like the nicest guy in the world, but I don't have to sit down for dinner with him, so I don't mind that much because at the end of the day, I'm here. I watch the Jets. I want to win football games. I want us to be in the playoffs, and he would have helped get us there, and also he would have accelerated our understanding of what we've got with Zach.
Yeah.
When you give Zach a weapon like Tyreek Hill, if he still struggles significantly, you start to ask the question of what else can we do if we've signed CJ Uzomah, if we put a line that's got 3 first-round picks or 2. I hope it's not 3 first-round picks, but 2 first-round picks and big money signings on there, and we give him Tyreek Hill to go with Elijah Moore and Corey Davis. There's not much else you can do, and so if he's still struggling, although there is rookie element, it's year 2, he could still advance. It would accelerate that understanding of what you have. I'm still working through it. I don't know how I felt. On one hand, I'm kind of like, he seems like a bit of a douchebag of a person, so I don't really care that much. But on the other hand, I'm kind of like, man, what a phenomenal player. And to get him without giving up a first round pick, I mean, that was the thing. Like, Joe
Audacious.
Douglas got Kansas to accept a deal that, on the face of it, it's phenomenal. You keep number 4, you keep number 10, you get Tyreek Hill, you spend those 4 and 10 on defense, and all of a sudden you've got a team that's playoff contention straight away. So
I mean, it's wizardry, isn't it? It's wizardry.
I don't know how you do it.
If Tyreek had decided to join the Jets and he got him for without giving up 4 and 10, we would just be going absolutely nuts. So it's funny how that was almost thrown out there. I don't know who put that information out through Schefter, that we didn't offer the first round. I don't know if it was the Jets trying to say we almost traded, we accept it. I don't know who put it out there, but I don't think it did a lot of favors, because I think on one side it was like, oh, that's impressive. You got them to agree to a deal without giving the 2 first rounders. That's great. On the other side, and I know Matt, you're very strong about this opinion, is that you feel that there was room for more, that he could have done more, and you allowed a choice to be made by Tyreek rather than making Kansas City saying we're only accepting the Jets' offer.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's criticism is perhaps harsh, but there's certainly a question to be raised, and this kind of goes back to how you want to build your team and the kind of people in the building. I think everyone, as soon as the news broke, as briefly as it was super keen to have Tyreek on the team. And does that raise a question then, given that he didn't have a trade clause, given that by accounts he would have joined the Jets to get that money if it hadn't been for having that choice? Is there a world perhaps where JD perhaps forces Kansas City's hand and says, we'll outbid Miami significantly enough that you'll only accept our offer, and as long as Tyreek signs an extension on the dot, we will give you a significant improvement on return so that he comes to us? And it didn't transpire like that, and there's obviously a lot of moving parts behind the scenes. We don't know if Kansas City, to some extent, wanted to do right by one of the best wide receivers in their franchise history. Mm. We don't know if they just set a bar to Tyreek's agent saying, if you can bring us this return, we'll trade you. It's hard to know what went behind the scenes. Obviously, only time will tell how it truly pans out, because obviously Tyreek is earning a lot of money, and he has got to do... You'd hope that he can do a lot of lifting for that offense in Miami to justify that fee. Mm. Whether that comes to pass, we won't see. But I think the Jets are in this window for the next 2 seasons where Zach is on small money, and you've kind of got that runway to build. And the faster you can accelerate and the faster you can get there, the better. Because ultimately, at the end of those 2 seasons, you either know if you're sticking with Joe Douglas, Robert Saleh, and Zach Wilson long term, and you're building a franchise around them for a decade, however long it is, or whether it's time to, unfortunately, pump the brakes, stop it, and start again.
Yeah.
How it transpires, we'll see. But I just felt like if they really, really wanted Tyreek Hill, perhaps there was more that we could have done to force the hand. But decision was made, it's in, and you can only be so annoyed about it.
No, and that's where there's key, the key information there is, and it's been conflicting reports about whether he would be signing an extension. There's some of the members of the beat who do say, from what they heard, that he was going to prepare to sign with the Jets if that was the only offer. Others have said he wasn't going to, and if he doesn't, then you can't do it for a 1-year rental potentially. So at this point, it's all a moot point, because he got what he wanted. He says, "I'm going home," which is, so he was very much pro wanting to go back to Miami. It's been where he wants to go. So at the end of the day, he got what he wanted. The Jets were in, but he chose the other team. And at that point, how far do you push for a player who has his heart set on going to a certain team, and even if he has to say, well, I'll take the money, and I'll go to New York because they're offering the money, and they're now obviously making my current team the best offer, the only offer they'll accept. I'll do it for the money. Well, that is what I spoke about with Will Parkinson last week. Is that something that we really want to entertain, is guys who are just coming purely for the money, but then in the man they're going to say, yeah, I would have rather gone to Miami. I would have run. I wanted. I don't know.
That's Joe Douglas's job, though. That's Joe Douglas's job with the New York Jets. I think
there's other options. We have so much assets. We have so much assets to do that. I'm not sure whether we would want someone who is not really happy to be there. We've got a lot of heavy lifting still to do to get to being a good team.
That's Joe Douglas's job, man. That's Joe Douglas. Any one of us could sit here and make a trade offer to Kansas City that gets accepted. Like, I could be put in that room and say to Kansas City, I'll give you 10 and 35 and we'll get Tyreek Hill. His job and why he's paid so much is you've got to get players to come here. That's what his job is. That's why he's paid $6 million a year. He's one of the highest paid GMs in the league. I know with the New York Jets, and sometimes you have to be creative and find different ways to get it done. But ultimately, you can't hide behind that excuse forever. Like, yes, with the New York Jets, yes, we haven't been to the playoffs in 10 years, but if you keep putting that up as an excuse for everything that we do, we're not going to get anywhere. And it's the same with the draft. Like, a player might have his heart set on playing somewhere else, but you still draft him, don't you? Because you want the best people in your room. And that's exactly why you should be targeting that top tier. If we're just settling for people whose number one priority is to come to the New York Jets, we're going to have a very small group of players.
No, of course, draft prospects are going to want to go. They may have a preference of where they may, especially the teams that are in the area where they may get selected. They may have a preference, but it's a bit different from a guy who's got that much clout in terms of what he's put on the field in the last 5, 6, 7 years, rather than a rookie coming in who hasn't proven himself and has to prove himself in the league, right? So, if he wants to go, then he's earning that much money. A rookie's earning this much money. Tyreek's earning the largest wide receiver contract ever given out at this point. It's a bit, you go, well, yeah, and the character concerns is something that, yeah, you got to wrestle with, and does that factor in terms of his temperament? We'll see how frustrated he gets, if there is frustrations, if it's an OBJ situation, again, like what happened in Cleveland. So we'll have to see all that happens. And obviously, as Jets fans, we hope that's the case. But it was one of the situations. The more time I've had, it was such a whirlwind that it happened. I was like, yeah, you want the guy on the field for Zach, for the team to kind of progress and to take that step up. The more time you have time after the fact and more time to think about it, would have been very hard sell for me. I'm not a fan of the player, of the man, from everything that's been out there. I'm not a fan. It would have been a very hard sell for if he was lighting up on the field and is as electric as we know he can be, for me to turn to my son and say, no, you can't get Hill's jersey. Why? What's the conversation? It's just one of those things. It'd be to have a guy like that. Yeah, you are kind of going down a route that is not as pleasant. So if we could do it elsewhere, let's do it. Obviously, there's other options. I mean, David, in your article, you wrote about potentially there's some other options that could be available. We don't know. Seattle or mentioned that there's kind of rumblings up there that they could be open to offers. What's your feelings about maybe still trying to push for another vet signing or a vet trade?
I think it's key for our development. I think it's key for Zach's development to improve that wide receiver room. As things stand right now, our wide receiver room is probably weaker this year than it was last year. So I think Joe Douglas has a responsibility to go out and explore every avenue. And if Seattle are open, and that's all you need. You don't need them to be willing to do it. You don't need them to want to do it. You just need them to be open to the conversation. Like you said, we've got the assets. Seattle are in part of their own rebuild at the moment. They've obviously traded away Russell Wilson, so they've got to always start a rebuild of their own. So it may be that they have to move someone like Tyler Lockett, whose contract may be prohibitive, to sign in DK Metcalf. It may be that they want DK Metcalf to stay, but they're not going to give him another £20+ million contract when Tyler Lockett's already got one. So I think it's key that we do that. I think if we don't do it, then we better hit on that early round receiver. We can't afford to miss on a receiver. And if people say, you can go offensive line at 4 and you can, absolute garbage, it's rubbish. You can't do that. You can't leave Zach out there with just Corey Davis and Elijah Moore, both of who were injured last year. Neither one of them made it for a full season. So then you're getting down to, do you want Zach Wilson in a really key year 2, going into a game with Jeff Smith and Tariq Black and people like that? If you leave that option open, then Joe Douglas has to be held accountable for him. And I know a lot of people are pro Joe Douglas. He's made some great trades, he's made some great signings, he's made some great picks. I'm a big fan of Joe Douglas, but I'm not in this camp where he can just not do something and not be held accountable for it. So I was kind of in the middle of you two when you were talking yesterday with you and Matt. I was kind of like, I understand where both of you are coming from. I understand that, because we don't know the details, we can't make a definitive judgment. If Kansas City, like you said, just said, this is the line, get above it, we'll accept it, you go. I mean, horrible GMing if that's the case, because you want to get the absolute maximum that you can for your team. So had Joe taken the second round out, stuck a first round pick in, would they have accepted it and declined Miami's, and then Tyreek has to come here? Potentially. and then it comes on to would he have signed? I've heard that he would have, but Connor Hughes said that he wouldn't, so you don't know. There's no definitive answer there either.
Yeah.
There's a lot of unknowns in that situation, but I think Joe Douglas bringing in a veteran wide receiver who's proven it in the league is a really vital part of this offseason.
Yeah.
We haven't signed the Allen Robinson. We haven't signed. We didn't try for Devontae Adams. There's a lot of players that have moved that we haven't been able to capture. I mean, OBJ's out there. Would you go OBJ, even though he's injured and he's going to be rehabbing for most of next? Well, I don't know. Is he expected back at the start of the season?
It's going to be touch and go, from what I've heard. Yeah.
Apparently the Rams want him back. If you're OBJ, you go back to the Rams because you've got an opportunity to win again straight away. But do you start looking at players like that, or is it you bring in MVS and you draft a Garrett Wilson at 10, and you just hope that Garrett Wilson is as good as a first round receiver should be? And Elijah Moore stays healthy, and Corey Davis gets rid of his drop problem that he had last year and reverts back to his kind of career average. There's a lot of unknowns, but that wide receiver room, that makes me nervous.
I mean,
that makes me really nervous.
It makes me really nervous because look, we said that we were in for Mike Williams before he re-signed. We were apparently interested in Calvin Ridley before he got suspended. We've been linked with Tyreek Hill. We were apparently in talks for the Cooper deal, which I thought, goodness, we should have just blown them out of the water and given them a 4th round pick, which is nothing, and just got the Cooper done, and that would have been done and dusted, right? And the money that he's on now looks like very, very manageable compared to what else the options are. But now you look into it, one, we're being forced to take the players no matter what, which is what we don't want to go into a draft, is saying we need to take this player no matter what. What happens if you're missing out on players like, for example, a Sauce Gardner is a fantastic player. We will not be able to take that player, and me and Matt have been having back and forth on this one. But I'm now forced to say, yeah, you've got to take the receiver. Take your favorite receiver at 10 that's available and go. At 4, get the pass rusher. Because why? Because we got a hole there. You've got to go. You can't allow the draft to go away from you as your last chance to fill holes around your young team. You've got to do it, and that's where you've got to try and get business done, at least at some level. Get somebody in the door who can do it. And I still think there's some people out there who could become available that we don't know about. It's up to them to explore all the options and find somebody who's going to fill in that gap, because you never know what can happen with these receivers, right? Like we say forever, there's a list of first round picks who work out and others who don't. And sometimes you just don't know. They always look good in college. That's why they get picked in the first round. You just don't know if it's going to work out when you get to the NFL. So that's just so nerve-wracking to put all that on that player. And the fact that they've been so aggressive in the vet market probably indicates to you maybe they're not so hot at the value of the 10th pick at taking a wide receiver in terms of this class. We like some of the players in this class. I don't think they necessarily think as much of the class in terms of at least for the 10th overall pick. But they may not have an option. That's just my worry.
Yeah, I mean, it is, as you say, no one wants to kind of be backed into a corner. We've seen the Jets be backed into a corner over the last couple of years. Like Becton was taken because we needed a left tackle, and it's kind of being repeated of Elijah Vera Tucker, we needed a guard. It's the same story, and this is what happens when you're trying to improve your team. Gradually, there's always going to be a hole, and there's going to be something that you need to improve on. I mean, I think Garrett Wilson is fine at the 10th pick. The question is, what happens if Garrett Wilson doesn't make it there? What happens if Atlanta at 8, with their desolate, barren wide receiver room, they're in the same position. They need to take a wide receiver. They take Garrett Wilson, and then suddenly you're looking at Drake London and Traylon Burks, and then that's the kind of way that the drop off is. So it'd be interesting to see how it pans out. Hopefully there's still some irons in the fire from JD, and there's some potential routes to be explored and see what happens. And it might even be in draft weekend he's able to leverage a trade for a team moving around as he kind of manages the draft board, because as we said, the Jets don't really need to make 10 picks or 9 picks, however many they've got this year. They kind of need less picks, better quality. And if part of that move is to get a wide receiver, then more power to them. I just think, though, the way it kind of is, at the moment, it's kind of Braxton Berrios as your wide receiver 3, and the closer you can get him to like the wide receiver 5 spot, where he can kind of be that gadget player, kick returner, kind of do a couple of different looks with him, but not build a game plan around him, the better. That's kind of what his contract says to me at like 2 years, $6 million. That's what they have in mind for him. So you've got to get someone in, like the Detroit Lions signing DJ Chark for 1 year, 10 million. Those kind of deals that the Jets have sat out on. That's exactly where they should be fishing, and just haven't quite been able to close it.
Keelan Cole's coming back.
Oh, really?
Book it. I could no.
Oh,
no,
right.
I just checked.
I thought it was breaking news. I'm like about
That's
to
not
go to
breaking
Twitter.
news. That's not
No.
breaking news.
Yeah,
the
I
way
mean,
you
Keelan
said
Cole
that-
is interesting. Yeah, the way you
Yeah.
said it is almost like you've been quiet and suddenly you just broke it, like it just popped up on your timeline or something. But no, yeah, Keelan Cole's an interesting one, right? I mean, that bring him back in. Like at this point, he knows the offense. He's got a good rapport with the team, with Zach. He's the perfect guy to fill out the room, to give us the option to be another receiver in the room, and then you can go with that first round pick. And then you've got pretty talented yet experienced room, and yet one that has decent rapport with Zach. I think that's doable. It's not the best, it's not the highest you could reach, but I think you've got to just get Keelan through the door and have that as a decent kind of wide receiver 4. And then
I'd start with MVS. I'd start
Yeah.
there, and if we can't get him in the door, then Keelan's more than capable. He's probably better than he showed last year.
probably yeah.
So second year in the system.
Exactly.
Could be better.
Exactly. I think there's options there, and I think it's just a shame what happened yesterday. But I think, and we'll see. There's a lot of we saw how these contracts are being kind of signed. These of the new deals, we saw that there is some flexibility here that JD was preparing, and obviously this is for what it turned out to be yesterday's events. But that means that it's there, right? The contract, the money there for a big contract is there. We've obviously got a ton of assets to hand out if we need to for a trade. So. We see. We probably as soon as I hit record, hit render on this video and on the episode, some trade will break overnight or something.
He might trade for an edge, so it opens it up so he can take a receiver. He might trade. Hunter's out there. I know Matt's not fond, but I quite like Hunter. And if you
but
get Tyreek
isn't
Hill
he got
for
the
2-2s,
with his roster bonus coming through? Isn't it? It makes it very hard to trade.
I think they can still trade him. I think. I don't know if it's Daniel Jeremiah broke it down. Someone did the other day.
Right.
So they can still trade him.
But then what do they do? And what if they go, because pass rusher you would think is where they go at 4, right?
So if you get the pass rusher, why don't you could go source at 4? You could just take the wide receiver you really like. Just take it.
Yeah.
Who cares what people think? If you really want Garrett Wilson, you say Garrett Wilson is head and shoulders the number 1 receiver in this draft. And people think, oh, we should take him at 10. The difference between 4 and 10 in this draft isn't that massive. If Kayvon drops to 4, then I might have a little bit more of a difficult proposition there, but we wouldn't be in the market. Or would you? I don't know. Maybe you would. I don't know.
I think you would.
There's so many options. I think I'd still take Kayvon. But
yeah, get the rotation going on the D-line, I think, as well.
Well, yeah.
Get 26 defensive ends, just rotating one play at a time.
No rookie cornerback is stopping people in the scheme. You need to hit the quarterback and
Source will stop
Source not.
Source will stop you right now.
Yeah.
That's stopping a 6'6" white guy. Not tough.
Yeah, well, I think it's it's an interesting dilemma, and it's up to Jody to figure out how he's going to figure it out. But I think for that, we'll wrap up all that chat about what happened yesterday and the fallout, and we'll head over to where Jody can really make a difference, and that's with some of these back of the draft diamonds. Okay, so for our segment here, where we're going to be going through some of the kind of back of the draft, kind of draft prospects. David, we'll go offensively first. Do you want to drop one of your? Let's see, who's your wide receiver that you'd like to drop as a kind of late round prospect?
So my wide receiver is probably a guy that most people will know because he's kind of done the rounds on Twitter a little bit in terms of people mentioning him as a potential late round steal, and that's I'm gonna have to pronounce the name now. Texas Tech's Eric Ezukanma. I think that's how you say his name.
Ezukanma. Eric Ezukanma.
Ezukanma.
Yeah.
So he wasn't actually on my radar at all. Like, I didn't actually know anything about him. I didn't know he existed until he caught some passes on Texas last year. When I was watching it, I think he caught 7 passes, and he was at times undefensible. Like, he kind of had a little bit of speed. He had some body control. High point the ball. I mean, our cornerbacks at Texas weren't great last year. That's why I'm kind of like Josh Thompson, just avoid him like the plague because he will get beat like a drum. I don't want anything to do with Josh Thompson. But Ezukanma kind of showed up, and he's a bit smaller than I thought. because he's listed at 6'3" on Texas Tech's website, and I think he came in at under 6'2" at measurements at the combine. So there's that element that I'm kind of like, he plays 6'3", so even though he measured under 6'2", he plays big, so I don't actually mind that too much. But he's expected to go kind of around the fifth round, somewhere around there. His stats weren't outstanding last year. I mean, they're not going to jump out at you on a screen. I think he had something like 699 yards, 4 touchdowns. So it's not like he dominated the conference or anything like that. His contested catches around 56%. So again, he's kind of like Drake London light. Yeah, if you had to put like a top of the draft prospect against a kind of a lower draft, he's not Drake London. He's not as good as Drake London. I'm not saying anything like that. He's a poor man's Drake London. But he has that contested catch ability. He has that high pointing of the football. He has that body control. I just quite like him as a prospect. I think he's going to be a decent receiver in the league. I don't know if it's going to be in year 1. It might be in year 2 or year 3. But I think he's got a lot of talent.
Yeah, I did like from what I saw when you gave me the list of prospects to go for. I gave me a chance to. I've seen some of them, but he was one that I hadn't seen too much of, and yeah, it was good to. It was, yeah, he had some impressive film out there. So an interesting prospect, definitely, who in the right scheme and kind of with the right time to come through could be a decent option as a kind of back of the wide receiver room, and kind of as he gets a bit further in his career, he kind of moves his way up the depth chart. But yeah, in terms of your tight end, I know Matt, when we dropped that one on the chat, you're pretty happy with the one. David, do you want to announce who are our kind of back of? And I think I backed this one up as well. Who's the back of the draft tight end?
It's probably a tight end who shouldn't be being mentioned at the back of the draft, and it's a tight end that everyone's going to know because his name's been around kind of like draft circles and scouting circles for years now. That's Charlie Kohler at Iowa State. I still don't understand why he's being spoken about as a 4th, 5th round prospect. I just don't get it. I wrote down some bit. He had 63 receptions, 764 yards, 6 touchdowns. He's got a 3.1% drop rate and a 66.7% contested catch rate. So he's reliable. He makes a difference in an offense. He's got the ability to come down with one-on-one situations. He's not a bad blocker. He's not an elite blocker, but he's not a bad blocker. He's not flashy, and I think that's the issue with him at the minute. And sometimes players get kind of that pre-draft hype buzz, and he was kind of getting a little bit of that last year before he decided to go back to Iowa State for 2021. He was getting a lot of draft buzz, kind of the Trey McBride kind of draft buzz last year. Yeah. And so he went back, and now he's kind of like old news. And if you get him in the 4th round or later, I think he's just going to be that 10-year reliable pro that comes in, he'll do 500 yards a season, 5 touchdowns, do good job blocking, come up with some big catches. He's that kind of prospect. I really like him. I think he would perfectly complement CJ Uzomah and Conklin. I think that would give us 3 legitimate, starting NFL tight ends.
Yeah. I really like the prospects, and especially now we look at those prospects at the end of the draft. Now, obviously, with the amount of investment that the Jets have made in the tight end room, with those 2 vets coming in, our attention has gone from basically Trey McBride on every mock draft, or Jeremy Ruckert at pick 69, to now, we're looking at those kind of later round prospects. Matt, you're also a fan.
Yeah, I think Charlie Kohler is just going to be a solid pro. He's kind of a catch and tackle guy, but he makes those catches count. He's not the explosive guy. I'll just throw another one in there though, just based off his pro day, and that is Delaney Woods.
I knew that was what you were going to say.
And it's out of Virginia, and this is just looking at JD's track record of good guys with that real high athletic upside. Delaney Woods actually set a new record for his RAS score for the tight end position. He is now the number 1 RAS score, and RAS is basically relative athletic scoring. So it's a formula that kind of takes all of your different measurables and kind of weighs it up against your height and your weight, and how it all comes together and scores you on a 1 to 10 scale. And Delaney managed to get a perfect 10.
Did you know who got the other 10?
Anthony Becht, isn't it?
Anthony Becht.
It is.
I mean, that's like from my early days of watching the Jets back in the day. I don't remember Becht being a kind of 10 out of 10 RAS score kind of guy, but fair enough.
One of those weird ones. And obviously, it doesn't always translate to being a good pro. But if you want someone late in the draft to bet on big upside, he might be the guy. But yeah, I think tight end, they'll certainly look to bring in that tight end free later in the draft.
Yeah, it gives us the flexibility to really we can wait around and get some really good value on a guy on a really good draft class in terms of the depth of this tight end draft class. And I think we can definitely find a really solid guy to be kind of fill out the tight end room. So it's worked out really well with them signing Uzama and Conklin.
There must be something in that Virginia water because Becht was West Virginia, wasn't he?
Was he?
Becht was West Virginia
Okay.
and thing is Virginia. So I don't know what they're drinking in Virginia, but obviously it makes you far more athletic than you appear.
A very athletic tight end, apparently. So with your lineman, David, who do you want to throw out there as your late round lineman?
So I've gone quite late round here. I was thinking about doing Cole Strange, but I think I've spoken about him so much that I can't actually call him a sleeper anymore. And after his performance at Senior Bowl, I can't.
He's probably day two, isn't he?
He could sneak into the end of the second round for sure. I wouldn't be shocked if that happened.
Yeah.
So I've got to go with Zach Tom, who's the offensive tackle from Wake Forest. Highly athletic guy, perfect for his zone system. He's not the strongest guy. He's not like a road grader. He's not going to push people off the ball that much, but he's a really good pass protector. He's allowed 4 sacks over 4 years in college. He played left tackle last year, but he had a year at centre as well. And I think centre's probably where he's going to land in the NFL, just because he hasn't got the length to play tackle in the NFL. So thinking about our progression plan with the Jets in terms of Connor McGovern's out of contract next year, getting someone in, I still prefer Cole Strange. Get Cole Strange in the 3rd round if you can get him, and then just sit him. And I think he'll be a centre as well. I think that's where he'll land. But if you can't, get Zach Tom, because he's one of those players. Athletically, he's not going to blow you away, but he just plays with such good technique. His hand usage, his mirroring technique, like everything. When you watch him, you're kind of like, yeah, you're pretty good. And I think we spoke about it this morning. His best game was against Florida State, and you'll know I absolutely love Jermaine Johnson. Jermaine Johnson is one of my favorite edge rushers in the draft.
Yeah.
And Zach Tom allowed 0 pressures throughout the whole game.
It was concerning.
It was kind of like,
I hadn't seen the Wake Forest Florida State film. I watched other film of Jermaine Johnson. I hadn't watched that one. So obviously I was watching it, and I kind of don't even know why, but I kind of just was watching Zach Tom, and I picked up the footage, and I was like, hold on, it's Florida State. There's Jermaine Johnson, number 11 there. I was like, oh, he's not doing anything. The guy, because he was doing a great job, and I texted you, I said, is it worrying about Jermaine Johnson, or is it good for Zach Tom? It's probably a bit of both, I guess. It shows that Jermaine Johnson, obviously, there's still work to be done from his game, but we know he's a great prospect. But Zach Tom shows that technique, and he can really kind of hold his own against top players. So you really think he does very much look like an NFL player within that setup at Wake Forest.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, it is a little bit concerning, but edge guys do tend to go in and out of games. You see that with the best ones in the NFL as well. Von Miller will disappear for a little while. These guys, Hassan Reddick, will disappear for a little while. It was slightly concerning just because of how much he was stonewalled, but his stats across the entire season just hold up to all the other edge rushers, so I'm not overly concerned. But massive props for Zach Tom for holding his own against who is going to be a first-round talent and probably a top 15 pick as well. And that's at left tackle, where I don't think he'll fit. So, it's a really nice prop for Zach Tom.
Yeah, and it shows his versatility across the line. If he had to pitch in somewhere, if he's a backup to begin his career, he could fill in terms of, he could fill in at tackle if he needed to in a pinch, right? He could be almost like a poor man's Elton Jenkins, the guy from Green Bay who's just played all across the line. It's good to have a guy who can kind of maybe not be amazing at everything, but can pitch in and be kind of hold the fort guy when you have injuries, because these things can happen very fast, as we saw last year. So,
and like I've kind of wrote about this week, I want to see Joe Douglas hit on a late round lineman.
Yeah,
I'm not. His
the
guru
thing,
status
yeah.
is just it's on life support, because you can't just keep taking first round picks and call yourself a guru. You don't need to be a guru to say that. He's, Elijah Vera Tucker,
offensive line fanatic instead of a guru, right?
So we need to see this draft, and this draft is perfect. Actually, this is kind of his moment. Find your Marshall Yonder. Let's find that person, because there's no pressure on him to start straight away. You've just given Laken Tomlinson a big contract. You can draft a lineman and sit him for a year and really develop him to start next season. If you can get that, Connor McGovern, what would you expect, 10 million or something like that? That comes off the books, and you've got a rookie there. You apply that 10 million into a receiver or somewhere else. So this is his time. This is his moment to prove that guru status from 2008. I think was Marshall under. I don't even know when he was drafted.
It was
but it was a long time ago now.
Yeah.
He needs to earn that status again. You don't get a lifetime pass for one player.
Matt, is there any offensive sided players do you want to mention at any position in the offensive side?
I'll keep going on the linemen and continue my theme of just choosing those who have the most athletic upside. And this is probably a Cole Strange alternative in that kind of 3rd to 4th round range. And it's Dylan Parham out of Memphis. He's played across the line, similar to Zach Tom. He's kind of got starts at left guard, and right tackle. But his background is what makes him super interesting. So when he was recruited, he was a tight end. Then they kind of shifted him over to defensive end for a bit. And he's now ended up at the interior offensive line. So he's kind of got all of that explosiveness, versatility, speed, athleticism from playing those kind of more dynamic positions, and he just applies it to the offensive line. And if that wasn't enough, in high school, he was a triple jumper. So you don't see many offensive linemen coming into the NFL draft who used to triple jump. So he's kind of tailor-made for this kind of spread RPO offense, kind of quick, dynamic, explosive. So he's a really interesting prospect and kind of guy out of Memphis. Lots of upside, so could be a perfect fit for the Jets scheme.
Yeah, we're definitely looking at guys who can, you're looking at potentially replacing McGovern for next year. And then you obviously, if we don't take an Ekwonu at 4, or if he's gone.
Better not.
Well, yeah, that's a big contention with our group. But, if you want to maybe look at those guys who can be a guy who can come in and be better than what we've got with Conor McDermott, and then someone you can say, yep, that's confirmed. See you, Conor McDermott, in summer you can say bye to him and bring the rookie in as the kind of emergency backup at tackle if Mackay is not able to stay healthy or something like that. There's a big contention about how far you got up the chain in terms of insurance with someone like Becton. But I think if you can get someone who can be a mid-round player, that gem who could kind of come in and fortify it and be there, so you don't have to spend top capital on a lineman. That's where you want to get
the Jets absolutely need another tackle.
I was just about to say,
because
when you started talking, Matt, I thought you were going to say Cordell Volson. When you started talking, I thought you were going to go Cordell Volson from North Dakota. I just had a feeling. I was wrong on that one. I was right on Delaney Woods, but I was wrong on Volson.
But yeah, you can't go into September being one injury away from Conor McDermott getting serious snaps, and the coaching staff will not want to be in that position. And that doesn't have to be a Ekwonu, but it needs to be something better than Conor McDermott in that tackle spot. Otherwise, you're asking for trouble with Zach's second season.
I still think there's some good vets out there that you could fill in.
Yeah,
there's some vets out there who could be that insurance package. They've got NFL reps. They can hold the fort and not get Zach killed and be a much bigger upgrade than Conor.
And Morgan Moses wasn't available this time last year, was he?
No,
Morgan
he came
Moses
in the
became
summer.
available in the summer.
So these players, that happens, and you don't want to leave it that late because you could be out of options. And we were very lucky last year that happened, especially with what happened to Mackay in week 1. But you definitely want to get someone in before the draft, so you don't have to put it on
draft guru. Come on, Joe.
Draft guru, but also again bring in that guy so that you can bring in for a couple of mil per year and get on a bit of a discount, a vet as well. Bring both, guys. Defensively, David, we'll go with defensive line. Who's the defensive line kind of late round or kind of late gem that you want to mention?
So I'm conflicted. I'm really conflicted about this one. So I've put down Ali Fayed, who's an edge from Western Michigan. I'm going to steal the stat. Born in Dearborn, Michigan, hometown of Robert Saleh. So there's a little bit of connection there.
Yeah.
And I've put him down only because his instincts, and that's, he's not athletically the most gifted person in the world, and I struggle to figure out where he's going to fit. His hands are inconsistent. He doesn't play with the best leverage. His tackling is a bit of a mess. I don't know what his missed tackle rate was, but I think it was like 32%. It's high. It's really high. But, and here's the but. He's really instinctive. He plays with a massively high motor. He's non-stop. He's high character. And statistically, he had 13 sacks last year, 17 tackles for a loss, 58 total tackles, and 8 forced fumbles. He's one of those players that just knows where the ball is, and he manages to find his way to the ball. You don't always know how he's done it, but he always gets to the ball carrier. He makes plays behind the line. He turns the ball over, in a positive way. Obviously, as a defensive player, he gets those turnovers, and he's one of those guys that probably he might not even get drafted. You could probably get him as an undrafted free agent or 7th round as the latest. But he just strikes me as a Robert Saleh kind of guy. 6'2", 250, probably too small for a defensive end, too big for a linebacker. Don't really know where he fits in our system. But I like intangibles and I like instincts in late draft picks and in undrafted free agents. So that's why I just wanted to highlight him, just because I think his production warrants a little bit of highlighting.
Yeah.
Just before draft season, so people get to know his name. And he's not a Ukrainian-born or Lebanese-born Ukrainian arms dealer, as I Googled this morning and came up with completely the wrong person.
Right.
So just watch out when you're Googling.
Yeah,
Ali
make sure you
Fayed,
put
'cause
Western Michigan after.
Put Western Michigan or football
or
or
WMU or
defensive
something.
end or
Yeah.
do something.
Yeah, absolutely. No. He looks fun. Like I say, when I saw the film, I've heard of him a little bit. I haven't seen much of him, but I got a chance to look into it a bit this morning. He looks like a fun guy. But yeah, just like you said, where does he fit in an NFL defense, and especially in ours? So, but yeah, a good guy to highlight and well worth it with the stats that he put out there. In terms of linebacker, you were kind of decided with there was two guys that you were kind of debating. So I'll let you throw both of them out there.
Yeah, so the two guys that I was debating was Troy Anderson from Montana and Damon Clark from LSU. And I didn't actually write a lot of notes for Damon Clark down because I just put leader, athlete, character. And that's exactly what epitomizes kind of his career at LSU. He was the leader on that defense, captain of the 2021 defense. We know that Robert Saleh, Joe Douglas like their captains. That's kind of a consistent theme that went through our draft last year. He's a sideline-to-sideline player, good in coverage. Yeah, he's a will linebacker at the next level. Something that I still think we need to address. I know a lot of people like Quincy Williams, and I like Quincy Williams, but I'm not sold that he's the long-term answer. So if you need someone like Clark to come in the middle rounds, then by all means, I think he can do a job for you. And Anderson, I just really like his story because he played everywhere. He's a quarterback, bit of a running back, played some linebacker. I think linebacker is where he sticks. Another really instinctive player, someone who just finds the ball. I haven't got his tackle numbers in front of me, but I think they're absolutely ginormous. There's like 130 something tackles last year.
He certainly gets there. He ran a 4.42 as well. Is it?
He is absolutely lightning, and that's that sideline to sideline. Both of these guys, they have pace, they have speed, and they have the kind of range that you want from someone playing next to CJ Mosley. So that's why I've kind of highlighted both of these guys, just because I think they complement what we already have, and they fill a need that we don't probably have. I mean, Quincy's fast, but he doesn't always play with the instincts, and he sometimes overruns a play.
Yeah.
If we can't get Chad Muma, which is obviously my top linebacker that I want on the Jets, Clark or Anderson would be just quite good players, I think, for our system.
Here's the question: Where does Brandon Smith go in this draft? The linebacker from Penn State, because
anywhere from the 2nd to the 6th.
2nd to the 6th, and it's such a broad spectrum. I've seen him linked, and he is he has a lot of upside. And it's when someone bites on that upside, because he is a sideline to sideline guy. So
athletically, he's probably the most athletic linebacker in the draft.
And is he that kind of Salah linebacker crush or does someone else bite on that upside too early? Because I don't think we can take him at 35 or 38.
No, you can't.
Maybe 69. You can make an argument for
I think someone bites early.
It's just when.
He's that 5-star prospect, isn't he? And he's got the name, he's got the athleticism. So I think someone is going to bite early, and I don't think that without repetition, with the guys that we want, they're not going to go that high. I don't think that from all reports, they're pretty happy with the linebackers that they got in terms of at least not going big draft, value. Maybe we'll start looking at Chad Muma with the 38 pick is maybe where we would have to take him. David, do you think?
Yeah, he's not getting out. I don't think he's getting out the 2nd.
No,
I don't think
it's going up. It was before. It was like there's always your favorite draft guys who are in the mid rounds end up being kind of 2nd round picks and sometimes even late round first. What's interesting about Damon Clark is that when I was looking through all the stats and I looked at mock draftable with the spider chart, he's got a 92% comparison to Devin Lloyd athletically. So that's a clear what we're talking about. Here's the top prospects in the class, or one of the top prospects in the class, and here's a guy who's later on who's basically the same player. Probably just there's a few things in his game that is that makes the difference, right? But Damon Clark looks interesting, and Anderson, fantastic, really interesting prospect in terms of his history with it, move around positions, and yeah, he looks like an absolute beast. Running around like a man with his hair on fire. So if the instincts are there, I think that's a guy that it could be an interesting guy for Salah and Ulbrich. In terms of the DBs, who's your late round DB that you're interested in?
So this one, I actually struggled with this one, but I went with Zion McCollum.
Yeah.
Plays in the FCS, so you've got to question the level of competition as well. But he's kind of a 6'2", 200-pound guy, good quickness, good speed, really physical, plays the ball in the air really well, had 3 interceptions last year. It seemed like it was kind of coming together. The reason I had to struggle with this one is because I've only seen 2 of his games, and I don't necessarily like talking about players when I've only seen a couple of their games.
Mm-hmm.
But I only managed to see 2 of his games, but in both of them, he looked quite sticky, he looked really physical. He showed good leadership. He was constantly on at his other teammates. He was getting them into position. I quite like that at that level. He's definitely a late round prospect. I don't know if he'll even get drafted. He could go undrafted again. So these are kind of looking at, you see those 15 names that come up after, the draft's finished with all teams kind of clambering to try and get him. This is the kind of guy that I see that being. So we won't have to waste is quite a harsh word to say. We don't have to waste a draft pick. We won't have to use a draft pick on Zion for more than likely. But he's quite a long corner. He's not. Is he Armand Gardner light, like really light? He's probably Sauce Gardner, really, really, really light in terms of his 6'2". He's long.
Well, Zion
McCollum
well. Is 6'2", 200 pounds.
Is that what Sauce is?
I'm not in terms of Sauce.
I think Sauce is a bit taller, isn't he?
I'm just trying to get his name.
This is listening. This is quality listening.
This is absolutely
Matt. Throw someone out. Well, Andres does this.
You caught me out with
the
the
Jets
comp.
should draft Verone McKinley out of Oregon in like that day
love
3,
him.
That's
5,
love him.
Okay, yeah.
round 5 kind of guy. He's kind of. I mean, we've
Do you
all
think
seen
he'll last that long? Do you think he'll last to the 5th?
Yeah, I think he's just because he's kind of got the size against him. I think 4th or 5th is where he'll end up nestling around just because he's got that side knock. But he's someone who plays a lot like Jordan Whitehead. He's kind of physical, gets in your face, kind of has that ability to kind of cover in that kind of quasi linebacker role. And I think the upside as well, just for that day 3 contributor, looking at that special teams upside, kind of being able to hit hard, cover, do what you need and kind of play at a high level, you'll get a lot out of there. Obviously, he's, as I said, the knock on him and why he won't go quite as high as like the 2nd or 3rd round is the size of the knock. If he comes in at, I've got up here 5'10", 198, so he's a smaller dude, but he plays with a punch and jetpacks in his pockets to kind of get him to the ball.
Yeah, no, Verone McKinley is an interesting prospect. In terms of Zion McCollum, he's a little bit heavier than Sauce. He's about 10 pounds heavier, but he ran a 4.33. I remember seeing he ran 4.33 at the combine. But he's kind of got that kind of arm length. He's kind of quite low on the scale of the arm length, wingspan kind of stuff. It's not desperately low, but it's on the lower end. It's in like the 20s.
I didn't look at it. Just from his tape, it looked like he plays quite long.
He does because I think because his vertical was 89 percentile. So he does
go up and get the ball.
And then he's a ball hawk as well. When you look at the amount of the ball just sometimes just like magnetizes to his hands the way sometimes some of his interceptions. Like, how did he get that? So it's interesting. He is an interesting prospect in the later rounds, and a guy who's got that kind of athletic upside, if not so much in terms of length, but definitely in terms of athletic upside with the broad jump and the vertical. So yeah,
McKinley had 6 interceptions last year.
Yeah,
I don't think I realised he had that many. That's quite impressive.
Yeah,
17 missed tackles as well, though.
I think there is. I know, Matt, you were quite down on this class yesterday when we were talking about on the chat. You were just saying about the class being not full of a lot of depth. I think there's quite a lot of prospects. I just don't think it's very special at the top, which obviously gets everyone sparkling. Obviously, and then other guys compared to those top prospects. I think
it's got a sweet spot. This draft class is a sweet spot of around players 10 to 75, I guess, where there's kind of that nice range of things, and then it just starts like it lacks the top end manpower. Like, you could make a case easy that Micah Parsons would go number 1 in this draft class, and he went 11th last year, and that's but not defensive rookie of the year. That's Micah Parsons as a prospect. I think, and then after that kind of back end, when you're into that 6th, 7th round, there's just not as much fun upside to a lot of these players. So I think it's a pretty stale draft class. And of course, the proof will be in the pudding, and we'll only truly know in 2, 3, 4 years' time once we've seen them on the field. It's just, it lacks that bit of wow factor and that bit of sex appeal.
Yeah, David, what's your thoughts generally about the draft class as you've been coming through it as we head towards draft season or into draft season?
Yeah, I think Matt largely nailed it there. I think the prize kind of area, it probably goes. I'll probably push it back a little bit later to kind of like 15 to 100. I think in that 3rd, 4th round, I think you can get some really talented players in there, and I think there's going to be a lot of players who probably aren't as highly regarded now who will become stars in the league. I think, we were talking yesterday, kind of Tyreek Hill wasn't Tyreek Hill when he was coming out of college. I mean, he's a 5th round pick. DK Metcalf wasn't DK Metcalf. People didn't see them as attractive, kind of like, as Matt puts, sexy prospects. And I think there's going to be quite a few of them from this. I don't think you're going to see that top end, probably Hall of Famers that come out of this class. But I think you will see quite a lot of Pro Bowlers and a few All Pros in like the 2nd to 4th round range.
Yeah.
So it's good. It's a good year to have a couple of seconds. It's probably not the best year to have 2 picks inside the top 10. So
it is what it is.
It is what it is. But I quite like it. But I think we're always talking on the chat and we say, because our season ends so early, when the Jets season ends in October, we're talking about these prospects for probably 4 more months than most team fans are.
Yeah.
So we get bored of them. I'm kind of bored of these prospects now because we've been talking about them and kind of, we write about them. We did a podcast. We talk about them in our chats. So we have a good understanding of probably more prospects in this draft than I think I ever have. So I'm looking forward to seeing what the Jets do. But it's kind of like, come on, let's go now.
Well, absolutely. We're all tired of it. And not just that we have time, but also everyone has their own opinions of how to fix the Jets. We're all desperate for the Jets to be fixed and to become a really a top team or a team that's challenging for the playoffs every year. And everyone's got their own ideas of how to do it. And if you disagree with someone online, you know what it's like. So it ends up being very tiresome because, everyone's saying you're wrong, I'm right. That person's
There's one
wrong,
guy
I'm
on
right.
Twitter who responds to every one of my mock drafts just with no. That's it. The extent of the conversation is no. And I change it all the time. So I'm kind of like,
what?
It's no to about 100 prospects now that I've featured in mock draft. So, it is what it is. And
It's probably he's probably a Carl Hamilton stan at 4, right? Because that's probably one player you'll never find on your top of your draft, right?
Yet.
So
maybe I'll put that out later and see if that works.
Maybe that'll be quite just as a kind of a tell. But no, it is crazy time. It is crazy season, obviously, and bit of yesterday's calamity only just stirs up the frustrations as well. So hopefully Joe Douglas has got something up his sleeve, but we'll see if he does. But anyway, the draft should be able to bring some new talent and infusion. Like, we'll be back. Obviously, next week we're going to start bringing in some guests I've been arranging. So now that we've got David back on for a show and done this kind of depth of the kind of the deeper draft prospects, we'll start bringing some guests in to have some other opinions and maybe some other of their favorite guys as well. So yeah, Matt, is there anything you want to say to this before we head off?
I was just doing a quick scroll of Twitter, and Rich Samini is apparently saying the next wide receiver to watch is AJ Brown. So keep your eyes peeled.
I saw that.
That might be one for the next episode.
And
who knows?
What's interesting, obviously, and we know the relationship between him and Elijah is very strong, and that could be a draw if anything did happen. But
I think that was probably the extent of Rich Samini's investigative journalism. Ole Miss, let's go.
Yeah, well, that's just a little bit of pop, just to get a bit of traction on his ESPN article, of course. So we'll see about that. But there are prospects, like I say, there are people in that age, AJ Brown, DK Metcalf, McLaurin. These guys haven't signed the new deal, and they're unrestricted free agents at the end of this year. So those are numbers. Maybe there may be a situation where they don't want to sign certain deals, and there may be a way in. We will see. But David, is there anything you wanted to listen to before we head off?
No, I mean, I'm interested now, and I'm going to have to go and have a look at Rich Samini's Twitter feed to see what this AJ Brown talk's all about. But that would be interesting.
We'll see.
Let's hope we get something like that again because it's exciting.
It was
It's
exciting,
exciting.
but
Even
maybe
if it ends
this
in
time,
disappointment.
maybe this time not with a guy with that
Yeah,
makes you
maybe not.
uncomfortable,
Maybe a nicer
and
guy.
also a guy that maybe decides he wants to come to the Jets. That would be a good thing as well, and then we can be really happy about it. But guys, yeah, so we'll be filtering in other guests as well. I'm looking to. I've been working on bringing in another co-host to kind of help fill in, being that third voice if David's not able, because David's got a lot of things, a lot of spinning plates. So I want to give us some flexibility to have a few more voices to kind of filter through and bring in. So you'll be hearing new people in soon, and also lots of guests that we know from the States and from the UK as well. So, but anyway, guys, enjoy the week. Let's see if anything crazy happens between now and next week. But if not, enjoy your week, and we'll catch you next week.